Every time you grab that overpriced bourbon off the shelf, some corporate suit earns a bonus. Not because the whiskey is good, because you did not know any better. That ends today. 12 American bourbons that only suckers still pay full price for. And number 1 is the biggest scam the whiskey industry has ever pulled. Number 12. Bulleit Bourbon mastered the illusion of authenticity. That thick glass bottle with the Frontier label and copper glow looks like it belongs in a dusty saloon somewhere outside Tombstone. The reality sits in a London boardroom. Bulleit is owned by Diageo, the same multinational conglomerate behind Johnnie Walker, Smirnoff, and Captain Morgan. At $30 to $35, the price exceeds what the bourbon inside justifies. The high rye mash bill delivers initial spice, dried orange peel, and pepper, but the mid-palate thins out quickly and the oak turns bitter on the finish. Founded in 1987 by Tom Bulleit, the brand passed through Seagram's before landing with Diageo, who poured millions into marketing while sourcing whiskey from MGP in Indiana and Four Roses in Kentucky for years, blending someone else's bourbon into its own frontier fantasy. They eventually built a distillery in Shelbyville, Kentucky in 2017, but the brand was a phenomenon long before it distilled a single drop itself. That is not inherently wrong. Many great brands source, but few charge a premium while pretending the bottle grew out of the Kentucky dirt. Bulleit works fine buried in a cocktail. Neat, it exposes every shortcut the branding tries to hide. You are buying a Western movie poster, not a Western. Bartenders reach for it out of habit. Smart drinkers reach past it. Number 11. Basil Hayden's occupies premium shelf space in every liquor store in America while delivering the thinnest bourbon experience money can buy. That elegant tall bottle with the metal band and parchment label looks like it belongs in a gentleman's club. The liquid inside belongs in a sample cup. Bottled at exactly 80 proof, the legal floor for bourbon, Basil Hayden's was designed in 1992 as part of Jim Beam's small batch collection to win over wine drinkers who found whiskey intimidating. Mission accomplished. The flavor barely registers. Soft spice, faint caramel, and a rye whisper that vanishes before your brain can catalog it. At $40 to $50, you are paying roughly $1 per proof point, which is terrible math when Wild Turkey 101 delivers 21 more proof points for half the price. Restaurant menus love Basil Hayden's precisely because it challenges nobody. Bar programs stock it because guests never complain. But absence of complaints is not the same as presence of quality. This is bourbon engineered to be forgotten immediately after consumption. Pleasant the way elevator music is pleasant. If your goal is to spend $50 feeling nothing, Basil Hayden's delivers that experience flawlessly. Its sibling Knob Creek costs $10 less, bottles at 100 proof, ages 9 years, and delivers actual bourbon character in every sip. Same parent company. Dramatically different commitment to the drinker. Number 10. Angel's Envy started as a genuine craft story and evolved into a corporate case study in how acquisition changes everything. Founded in 2010 by the late Lincoln Henderson, who spent 40 years as master distiller at Brown-Forman before retiring, this Louisville bourbon finishes in port wine barrels imported from Portugal. The concept was innovative. The early batches were remarkable. Then Bacardi purchased the brand in 2015 for an estimated $150 million, and the math changed. Production scaled dramatically to justify that acquisition price. Today, Angel's Envy sells for $50 to $60 and delivers dried fruit, maple sweetness, and wine tannins that complement a standard bourbon base. The port finish remains the differentiator, adding complexity that straight bourbon at this price rarely offers. The problem is that $50 now buys you industrial scale finishing, not the careful small batch work Henderson originally envisioned. The curved bottle and heavy glass still signal luxury. The liquid signals a brand that outgrew its origin story. You are paying for Lincoln Henderson's legend, not the product his corporate successors scaled to meet quarterly targets. Henderson passed away in 2013, just 2 years before the Bacardi deal. The bourbon he created and the bourbon you buy today share a name, a process, and not much else in terms of scale or intention. Number 9. Hudson Baby Bourbon is what happens when a marketing department writes checks that the aging warehouse cannot cash. Launched in 2006 by Toot Hill Town Spirits in upstate New York, Hudson was among the first craft bourbons to capture national attention. William Grant & Sons acquired it in 2010 for a reported $12 million and immediately positioned it as a premium curiosity. The bottle holds just 375 milliliters, roughly half the standard size, yet retails for $40 to $50. That translates to $80 to $100 per liter for bourbon aged less than 4 years. The liquid tastes exactly as young as it is. Raw corn sweetness collides with grain alcohol heat. A flash of caramel appears, then disappears before any depth develops. The mash bill is 100% New York corn, which the marketing frames as terroir-driven artisan craft. In bourbon, time in barrel matters exponentially more than where the corn grew. Kentucky's bottom shelf ages its bourbon longer than Hudson charges luxury prices for. Craft pioneers deserve credit for expanding the category. They do not deserve $60+ for whiskey that needs another 3 years in wood before it earns a seat at the table. Hudson tries to compensate for youth with small batch charm and New York provenance, but provenance cannot replace patience. Kentucky distillers understood that truth 100 years ago. Hudson still has not figured it out. Number 8. Baker's 7-Year once represented genuine value in the premium bourbon tier. Aged 7 years and bottled as a single barrel expression at 107 proof, it was the muscular sibling in Jim Beam's small batch collection alongside Basil Hayden's, Knob Creek, and Booker's. Then Beam Suntory made a decision that told you everything about corporate bourbon priorities. In 2019, they quietly changed Baker's from single barrel to small batch, removed the individual barrel character that made each bottle unique, and raised the price. The current version sells for $60 to $70 for a bourbon that lost its most compelling feature. The flavor still delivers toasted oak, vanilla, brown sugar, and a warm cinnamon finish. It is a perfectly solid bourbon. But solid is not what $65 should buy when the old single-barrel version cost less and offered more personality. Baker's became the rare case of a brand actively downgrading its product while upgrading its price tag. The bottle got fancier. The liquid got safer. Booker's, its sibling in the same collection, still releases uncut, unfiltered single-barrel bourbon that challenges your palate and rewards your patience. Baker's chose the opposite direction, smoothing out the edges to appeal to people who want premium bourbon without any of the intensity that makes premium bourbon worth buying. That trade tells you who the target customer is, and it is not someone paying attention. Number 7. Michter's U.S. Star 1. Small batch sells heritage so convincingly that most buyers never question whether the heritage actually belongs to them. The brand claims roots stretching back to 1753, referencing Schenk's Whiskey, a Pennsylvania farm distillery. The modern Michter's has almost nothing to do with that history. The original Michter's distillery in Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania, went bankrupt in 1989. The current company was founded in the 1990s by Joseph Magliocco, who purchased the trademark and began sourcing bourbon from Kentucky distilleries. Michter's did not operate its own distillery until opening a facility in Louisville's Chivoli neighborhood in 2015. At $40 to $50, the U.S. Star 1 small batch delivers pleasant caramel, butterscotch, and gentle oak with a medium finish. It is a competent bourbon dressed in mythology. The problem is not the liquid, it is the manufactured authenticity surrounding it. When a brand wraps itself in 250 years of heritage it did not earn, every dollar you spend is partly subsidizing a story, not a tradition. Plenty of honestly marketed bourbons deliver comparable flavor at lower prices without pretending to be something they are not. New Riff in Newport, Kentucky opened in 2014 and tells you exactly what it is, when it was distilled, and how long it aged. That transparency costs $35. Michter's charges more and tells you less. When a brand guards its sourcing details more carefully than its flavor profile, the secrecy is not protecting tradition. It is protecting margin. Number 6. Jefferson's Ocean commands $60 to $90 for bourbon that went on a boat ride. Founded in 1997 by Trey Zoller, Jefferson's built its reputation on sourcing bourbon from various distilleries and applying creative finishing techniques. The Ocean series, launched in 2012, ages barrels aboard cargo ships crossing the equator. The bourbon rocks through temperature swings, salt air exposure, and constant motion for months at sea. The marketing narrative is undeniably cinematic. The science remains remarkably thin. Independent blind tastings consistently struggle to distinguish Ocean expressions from standard bourbon priced at $30 to $40. What you actually taste is mild caramel amplification and a faint briny quality that could easily be suggestion rather than substance. The texture is pleasant. The finish is forgettable. At $60 to $90, this is bourbon that requires a slideshow to justify its existence. If the liquid stood on its own merit without the voyage story, it would sit comfortably in the $30 range and nobody would look twice. You are not paying for what is in the glass. You are paying for what the glass allegedly experienced. That is a souvenir, not a bourbon worth its shelf price. Meanwhile, Zoller has expanded the Jefferson's lineup to include expressions aged in everything from rum barrels to wine casks, each commanding progressively higher prices for progressively thinner justifications. The Ocean gimmick opened a door, and a flood of overpriced experiments followed through it. Number 5. Bulleit & Bow sells the ghost of America's most legendary distillery to people who do not know they are buying a haunting. This Diageo brand leans heavily on its connection to Stitzel Weller, the Louisville distillery that produced Pappy Van Winkle and Old Fitzgerald before closing in 1992. The marketing references a Solera-style aging system that allegedly contains whiskey stretching back to Stitzel Weller's final production days. How much of that original spirit remains in any given bottle is a question Diageo carefully avoids answering with specifics. At $50 to $60, Bulleit & Bow delivers soft vanilla, citrus, gentle spice, and a finish that trails off without distinction. It is an unremarkable bourbon wearing a remarkable name. The old skeleton key design on the bottle and the Stitzel Weller references do the heavy lifting. The flavor does not. Diageo acquired the dormant distillery's assets and recognized that nostalgia for Stitzel Weller was worth more than any new bourbon they could produce. The result is a product built on implication rather than substance. You are paying for proximity to greatness, not greatness itself. Every dollar spent on Bulleit & Bow is a dollar that could have purchased bourbon with its own identity instead of a borrowed one. The limited release, 22-year expression pushes this strategy to its most absurd endpoint, commanding $300 and upward for bourbon that leans on Stitzel Weller nostalgia while delivering over-oaked tannic whiskey that spent more time in wood than most careers last. Diageo understood something most drinkers have not figured out yet. The name Stitzel Weller is worth more dead than alive. Number 4. Willett Pot. Still Reserve is the bourbon that proves bottle design can override common sense. That distinctive pot still-shaped glass container is one of the most photographed bourbon bottles on social media and the #1 impulse purchase at the Willett Distillery gift shop in Bardstown, Kentucky. The problem is what the beautiful bottle contains. For years, Willett sourced bourbon from other Kentucky distilleries while their own spirit matured. The Pot Still Reserve expression, bottled at 94 proof, delivers sweet corn, mild caramel, and a thin finish that evaporates faster than your expectations. At $40 to $50, it consistently underdelivers compared to its shelf neighbors. Meanwhile, Willett's family estate single barrel releases, selected from their own distillate and often aged 8+ years, are genuinely exceptional bourbons commanding well-deserved premium prices. The contrast makes Pot Still Reserve look even worse. The distillery clearly knows how to produce outstanding whiskey when it wants to. The Pot Still Reserve exists to capitalize on tourists who fall in love with the shape of the glass before they taste what is inside. It is bourbon's most effective souvenir. Gorgeous on your shelf, disappointing in your glass, and profitable for a distillery that reserves its best work for different labels. Walk through the Willett gift shop on any Saturday and watch tourists line up to buy the Pot Still bottle because it looks incredible on Instagram. Meanwhile, the family estate 4-year rye, sitting 3 shelves over, is a genuinely transformative whiskey at a similar price. The shaped glass sells itself. The straight bourbon behind it earns your respect. One empties wallets, the other rewards palates. The distillery knows exactly which one pays the bills. Number 3. Kentucky Owl Confiscated is what happens when a heritage brand gets swallowed by global spirits money and the pricing loses all connection to reality. Originally produced in the 1800s, Kentucky Owl disappeared during Prohibition and stayed dormant for nearly a century. Dixon Dedman, a descendant of the original founders, revived the brand in the 2010 decade with small releases of sourced bourbon that generated genuine excitement among collectors. Then Stoli Group acquired Kentucky Owl in 2017, and the trajectory changed completely. The confiscated expression appeared on shelves at $120 to $150, a no-age statement bourbon with minimal transparency about sourcing or barrel selection. The flavor offers caramel, dried fruit, baking spice, and oak with a warm, extended finish. It is a competent bourbon. It is not a $150 bourbon. At that price, you are competing with allocated releases from Buffalo Trace, limited expressions from Heaven Hill, and barrel-proof offerings from Wild Turkey that deliver dramatically more complexity and character. Stoli recognized that Kentucky Owl's revived name carried emotional weight and priced accordingly. The bourbon does not justify the cost. The story does, but only if you are buying stories instead of whiskey. When a global vodka company charges you $150 for sourced bourbon in an owl-shaped bottle, the bird is not the only thing being confiscated. Dedman's original small releases were genuinely special, hand-selected barrels with real characters sold at prices that reflected their quality. Stoli took that credibility and weaponized it, slapping premium pricing on standard-sourced bourbon while banking on the reputation those early batches built. The transition from passion project to corporate product happened so fast that most bourbon drinkers never noticed the switch. By the time they did, they had already paid $150 to learn the lesson. Number 2. Orphan Barrel is Diageo's most ingenious marketing creation. The premise is irresistible. Forgotten barrels of exceptional bourbon discovered gathering dust in aging warehouses, rescued and bottled for grateful drinkers willing to pay a premium for rediscovered treasure. The reality is a global spirits corporation monetizing old inventory at astronomical markups. Launched in 2014, the Orphan Barrel Project has produced expressions like Barterhouse, Old Blowhard, Rhetoric, and Forged Oak, typically priced between $60 and $150. Some of these bourbons are genuinely overaged, meaning the wood influence has overwhelmed the grain character, producing tannic, bitter profiles that taste more like oak extract than balanced whiskey. Others are perfectly drinkable but unremarkable. The common thread is that none of them justify the price Diageo charges. These barrels were not orphaned by accident. They were inventory that did not fit existing brand profiles or was deemed surplus to production needs. Repackaging surplus stock as a luxury discovery is masterful storytelling. It is also the most transparent example of corporate bourbon fiction on the market. Every release comes with a romantic backstory about the barrels being found behind a wall, under a staircase, or in some forgotten corner of a rick house. At a certain point, you have to wonder how many hidden corners one warehouse actually has. Orphan Barrel ranks this high because it takes a mundane reality, leftover inventory, and transforms it into an emotional purchase that bypasses your judgment entirely. The genius is in the branding. Each expression gets a unique name, a custom bottle, and a backstory that reads like bourbon fan fiction. You are not buying bourbon. You are buying the feeling of finding buried treasure. Except the treasure was never buried, and the map was drawn by accountants. Number 1. Pappy Van Winkle at secondary market prices is the single dumbest purchase in American bourbon. At retail, the Family Reserve lineup is worth every cent. The 15th year expression carries a suggested price around $120 to $150. The 20th year sits near $200. The 23rd year reaches roughly $300. At those numbers, you are getting some of the most meticulously aged bourbon in existence, produced at Buffalo Trace under the Van Winkle family's direction, using a wheated mash bill that develops extraordinary depth over decades. The 15th year delivers caramel, vanilla, dried stone fruit, leather, and polished oak in seamless harmony. The texture is impossibly silky. The finish evolves and lingers for minutes. This is bourbon that has earned its mythological status through genuine craftsmanship and patience that most distilleries cannot afford. The problem is that virtually nobody pays retail. Annual production is extremely limited. Bottles enter a lottery and allocation system that turns purchasing into performance art. The secondary market, where most buyers actually find Pappy, inflates those prices beyond all rational connection to what is in the glass. The 15th year sells for $1,000 to $2,000 on resale. The 20th year commands $2,000 to $4,000. The 23rd year regularly exceeds $5,000. At those numbers, you are no longer buying bourbon. You are buying status, bragging rights, and a photograph for social media. $5,000 worth of bourbon should deliver $5,000 worth of experience. Pappy Van Winkle, as extraordinary as it genuinely is, delivers a $200 experience in a $5,000 transaction. The gap between those numbers is pure vanity. Master distiller Jimmy Russell's Wild Turkey 101 costs $25 and outperforms most allocated bottles in blind tastings. Elijah Craig's small batch costs $30 and delivers depth that rewards years of attention. For the price of one secondary market, Pappy 23rd, you could build an entire bourbon collection of 20 to 25 exceptional bottles that would bring you more pleasure, more variety, and more genuine education about American whiskey than a single trophy bottle ever will. Pappy Van Winkle is magnificent bourbon trapped inside a broken market. At retail, it is a masterpiece. At secondary prices, it is the most expensive proof that hype can override common sense. If you find it at suggested retail, buy it without hesitation. If someone quotes you 4 figures, walk away. Your palate cannot taste the difference between a $150 bourbon and a $2,000 one, but your wallet absolutely can.